What if the person you thought you knew better than anyone on earth turned out to be a complete stranger wearing a familiar face? We're not talking about some true crime documentary twist. We're talking about your mom, your dad, the person who packed your lunch and grounded you for coming home late. It started with a shoebox. Not a metaphorical shoebox, not a cinematic slow reveal with dramatic orchestral swells, just a dusty, unremarkable shoebox shoved behind winter coats in a closet you'd opened 1,000 times and never once looked into properly. Inside were letters addressed in handwriting you didn't recognize, photographs of your parents smiling in a city they never mentioned visiting, and a name, a whole human name written on the back of a photo with a date that predates your own birth by only 3 years. Your hands are doing that thing where they shake slightly, but you keep convincing yourself it's just the cold. Here's the strange mechanics of grief nobody warns you about. It doesn't end when the person dies, it just changes shape. And discovering a secret life is like grief, getting a second wind and showing up to the funeral wearing a completely different outfit. You thought you were done processing the loss, and now you have to process an entirely new person. The brain, bless its chaotic little heart, immediately starts running a kind of audit. Every memory gets pulled off the shelf, examined under new light, and either reinstated or quietly flagged as suspicious. That vacation where dad seemed distracted, the phone calls mom took in the other room, the slight hesitation before answering questions that seemed, at the time, totally ordinary. Psychologists call this a biographical disruption, which is the clinical way of saying the story you've been telling yourself about who you are just got a chapter you didn't write, inserted somewhere in the middle. One researcher described it as losing someone twice, first to death, then to revelation. And honestly, that framing hits harder than anything a grief counselor ever put on a pamphlet. Here's the irony that sits in the room with you like an uninvited guest. The more you love them, the more disorienting the discovery. Because love is, among other things, a confidence that you know someone. Turns out confidence in matters of the human heart is just optimism wearing a trench coat. History is full of these moments, post-mortem revelations that rewrite legacies. From presidents to poets, from jazz musicians with secret families to grandmothers who were wartime resistance fighters and just never brought it up over dinner. Each case feels singular and devastating and universal all at once, which tells you something important. This is not a glitch in the human experience. It is practically a feature. People kept secrets long before the internet made it complicated, and they'll keep keeping them, which means the discovery of a parent's hidden life is less an anomaly and more an extremely personal encounter with the oldest human tradition of all the performance of a self we're willing to share versus the self we actually carry. The community of adult children who've walked this road is larger and quieter than you'd expect, and their collective wisdom is basically sit with it before you act on it. One of the most common misconceptions is that discovering a secret means the love wasn't real, as if authenticity and compartmentalization are mutually exclusive. They are not. People are not frauds simply because they protected pieces of themselves. They are uncomfortably just people. So what do you actually do with a shoebox full of someone else's interior life? You go slow, you resist the urge to construct a verdict, and you let the facts exist alongside the memories without demanding that one of them win. The practical lesson borrowed from every cycle of inherited surprise in human history is this: identity is not a fixed document. It is a living negotiation. And a parent's secret doesn't erase your story, it expands it uncomfortably, generously, into something larger than you planned for. You are allowed to grieve the simpler version while making room for the complicated truth. What this really comes down to, philosophically, is whether you can hold two things at once, the parent you knew and the person you're just now meeting, and let both of them be real without letting either one of them be the whole story. Discipline here doesn't mean suppression. It means choosing, deliberately and repeatedly, curiosity over condemnation. You didn't get to ask them the questions this shoebox is raising. And that absence is its own particular kind of loss, sharp-edged and permanent. But you do get to decide what you carry forward, which is, quietly, its own form of inheritance. If you liked the video, subscribe and check out all our other topics.